Hey guys, TommyBryson here, and should you ever sell your stocks to go ahead and buy a house, okay? Whether that's for the down payment or, for example, you want to buy that house for cash. Do you do it with a retirement account, a normal account? How do you do it, and should you do it? Now, by the way, guys, right now, currently, I have around $260,000 invested in the stock market. So basically, I could go ahead, sell all those investments, pay the taxes, and then buy a house for cash. And by the way, it's not going to be in New York, obviously. It's going to be in Florida. A lot cheaper, a lot nicer, and on top of it, you can actually have a backyard. But the point is, do you want to do that? Am I going to do that? Well, in this video, I'm going to cover all the details. And by the way, do you also save for the down payment or for buying a house or the stock market? I'm going to cover everything in this video right here. And by the way, if you guys are new here, I post videos every single day, so you should also subscribe, hit the bell, so get notified, and on top of that, also destroy the like button. And by the way, although it might sound like, Tommy, I don't even have like $1,000 in my investment account, so why do I even care about this video? The answer is, well, if you keep investing consistently, eventually you will have a lot of money in your account. And then you'll have to be, hey, do I leave that money there, let it grow more, or do I take that money out and maybe, for example, pay down my mortgage, or for example, just pay the house in full? What exactly do I do? Okay, and by the way, if you keep investing, for example, into your Roth IRAs, into, for example, your 401k, in 5-10 years, you will have a lot of money in there. And when that happens, well, do you pay the house off, pay the mortgage? What exactly do you do? So although you might not be ready today, it's good to have that solution before that problem actually arises. So now the very first thing is this, guys, okay? If I grabbed all the money I have invested, 260K, I pay the taxes, I still have that 260K right there, and I bought a house, what exactly would that do for me? And on top of that, what exactly am I giving up by selling, for example, 260K worth of investments that are actually pretty good for the long run, okay? So how much money am I giving up for security today? That's the big question, because basically, every single dollar you invest today is going to be more dollars in the future. So that's always the question you gotta ask yourself, okay? So let's say, for example, I went ahead and I sold my $260,000 investment currently. How much money am I actually giving up for future Tommy, okay? Future Tommy in 30 years or so? Well, the answer is, I won't add any more money. And by the way, this right here is called a compound interest calculator. And I love using this because basically it does help me out a ton. Now, here it is, guys, okay? I would be investing for 30 years at a 10% return. How much money am I giving up in gains? Well, the answer is I'm giving up around $4.5 million. Now, you might say, Tommy, well, obviously the answer is keep that money there and don't sell anything. That way, when you're 50 years old or 54 years old, you'll have that money there for you to actually kind of say, hey, I can retire, everything is good, everything is safe, everything's fine. Because if you spent that money today, obviously you're giving up all these potential gains. But, you know, the answer is not always that simple, and it's never that simple, okay? Because although I am selling that 260K and I'm buying a house for cash, right? That's the whole idea here. Well, what do I get when I buy that house for cash? Well, the answer is a mortgage and a house that costs 260K. I put down 20%. The closing cost is around 60K in total. And on top of that, I'm actually not having to pay a mortgage anymore, right? So I'm saving around $875, not including the insurance, the taxes, and the maintenance, obviously, right? But overall, if I'm saving $875 now, I can grab that money now and put it towards my investment. So that would mean I would have to restart everything again. So now let's go over that math also. And again, it's important, you know, because if you have an investment account and you have, for example, 100K, if you paid off your house, that means basically you're saving all that money on the mortgage now, and that money can then be used to go ahead and invest. But if you do want to be kind of lavish and more fancy, you could use that money to just go ahead and basically have fun, travel, do whatever you want. But in my case, I would use that money in this example here to go ahead and invest that money. So let's see the difference here, okay? Again, 260K in 30 years at 10% return is equal to around $4.5 million. So how much money is equal to when it comes to, well, I'm going to start investing with $0, right? Okay, and on top of that, well, if I grab, remember guys, okay, the number is $875 per month I'm saving, right? I'm gonna invest this, multiplied by 12. That means I'm basically can invest around $10,500. So now let's put that number in here. I'm actually investing every single year $10,500 over 30 years, 10% return. How much money will I have? The answer is I'm only gonna have around $1.899 million. Now obviously you might say, Tommy, well, the answer is just keep your money and don't do anything with it. Keep in your investment. Don't sell anything. You buy the house when you're ready and you pay off that mortgage in 30 years. Okay, that seems like the best idea. But in reality, in 30 years, guys, a lot can happen. In 30 years, I'm going to be around maybe, what is it, like 54 years old or like 53 years old. So a lot can actually happen. You know, in 30 years, you can go ahead and lose your job. Your career is obsolete. You might be divorced. You might be crippled. You might not even be here anymore. Like a lot of crazy things can actually happen. So obviously the point is, this question is not a black and white question. This question is not a 1 and 0 question. This question is not a yes or no question. It's more like a personal question. So if you're asking me, Tommy, do I go ahead and sell my investments and buy a house for cash? The answer is it all depends on who you are and what most matters to you. Because although having 1.9 million is not as much as 4.5 million, will it actually matter that much at that point? Okay, that's the whole idea. And on top of that, do you rather have security today? You own your house, you have that house, you can't get it taken away from you, you already own it, you paid for it, it's yours. The only thing you have to worry about is basically insurance, taxes, and maintenance. And in my equation, that's only around like $500 per month. That's a big difference, right? So do you do that? You only have that to worry about, or do you keep investing and then basically just pay the house off in 30 years? Well, the truth is, guys, that it depends, you know, and I'll tell you in a few minutes exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. But I do want to say one thing here, guys, okay? All this math does not apply when it comes to a retirement account. So if you have, for example, a 401k account, a Roth IRA, traditional IRA, 403b, whatever you have, the answer is usually those plans have a ton of penalties if you go ahead and try to take that money out early. So at that point, it probably won't even be worth it. On top of that, with the penalties and the taxes, you're basically going to lose a ton of money, and usually it is never worth to liquidate those accounts. So if you're wondering, do I liquidate those accounts? The answer is usually no. The way I see this is this, okay, guys? That money I have in there is just for Tommy from the future. Like 50-year-old Tommy, 60-year-old Tommy, I never spend that money. Penalties are crazy. Taxes are crazy, okay? You don't want to do that. What I'm talking about is basically a normal taxable account. You take that money and then you go ahead and buy that house, okay? That's the whole idea. So overall, when it comes to retirement account, usually you don't want to do it. But Tommy, what exactly are you going to do here? Are you going to go ahead and sell your investments and buy a house? Or are you going to go ahead and basically keep your investments and then buy a house, put the 20% down, the closing costs, and basically do both at the same time? Well, the answer is yeah, kinda. Here's the thing, guys, okay? There's always a lot of ways to actually do things. So in reality, my plan is this, okay? I'm not going to stop investing. I'm not going to sell my investments because in reality, my whole goal is to hold on to these investments for the long term, meaning 10, 20, 30 years. That's the whole goal. Now, that is separate. Retirement account, taxable account, that's just for safety in the future. However, when it comes to the mortgage, what I'm going to do is this. Instead of going ahead and sell anything, I'm just going to go ahead and save up for the down payment for that house. And while I'm saving up, I'm renting. Because as you guys know, in the short term, renting is cheaper than actually buying a home. A home has taxes, insurance, and maintenance. If anything breaks, you pay for it. You have no landlord anymore. Everything is your responsibility. So usually, renting is going to be cheaper in the first 3 to 5 years, depending on where you live, what the rent is, and also what the mortgage is. And although, by the way, you might see, hey, Tommy, the mortgage is $1,000, the rent is $1,000, buy the house. No, it's not that simple. Again, you have insurance, you have maintenance, and that's all you. And you also have taxes to worry about. So usually, short term, renting is always going to be cheaper. So in my case, I'll be renting for around 3 to 5 years. I'll save up the money for the down payment and the closing costs. And while I'm doing that, I'm still investing a ton of money. Now for me, that means that basically I'm saving around $8,000 a month for that down payment in the future. And once I go ahead and I buy that home or I buy that house, by the way, these are kind of like deadlines, but again, they can change and they can be a lot quicker or take a lot longer time. It all depends on how things go. But I will have 2 incomes at that time because basically my wife and also me have 2 incomes, and then things will be a lot more easier. But overall, when I do buy that home and that 30-year mortgage, but it's no more than 30% of my take-home pay monthly, the answer is I'm not going to wait 30 years to pay it off. No, I'm going to go ahead and dump all of our extra money. The wife is on board, by the way, when we actually get married. When we dump all that money into the house, and that way we finished in around 3 to 7 years. Again, the budget for our house is only around $260 to $300K. I don't want to spend a $500,000 or $1 million in a house. It's insane. It's not worth it at this current period. And by that time, when we actually own that house, well, guess what, guys, okay? In 5 to 7 years, well, we've been investing for a long time, so our investments are actually up way more than 260. On top of that, that house is now ours, which means, hey, I also have $875 free to also go ahead and also invest that money. On top of that, I have extra money to go ahead and buy more properties for rental income and so on. But overall, the idea is when it comes to selling your investments, think about this. You're not just selling what you have today, but you're also selling what you're going to have in the future. But sometimes if you really care about security, it might just make sense to go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to sell this taxable account of 250 or 260 or 300K or 150K, whatever it is, 100K, depending on where you live. And I'm going to go ahead and just buy a house. I live in it. I'm fine with it. I'll invest more money. I'll catch up in the long term. And that's about it. But it all depends on exactly who you are and what you think. But there is one thing that you never, ever want to do. Now notice here, I'm going to save for that down payment around $1,000 to $1,500 every single month. Okay, that's the core idea. But I'm saving that money. I'm not investing that money. You never want to save for a down payment or a house for the stock market, because basically the stock market fluctuates. You can't predict it. Tomorrow, you can't predict it. In 5 years, you definitely can't predict it. And in 30 years, you can't predict it. Okay, so you basically want to have that money saved in just a normal, boring savings accounts. But Tommy, I'm missing out on so many gains. I get that. I understand that. Trust me. But guess what? If the market crashes, you don't want to be forced into selling all your stuff. That way, you're going to have a massive issue. Okay, that's the whole goal here. And guys, hopefully this video helped you. By the way, I'm only going to buy a house when I basically need a house. And that's basically when I'm already married, I have the kid and all that stuff. So by that point, I need a house. I need a home to give to my family and so on. But at this point, I can get away with just renting in a nice place. Like, you know, not that much money. Obviously, don't want to spend that much money on that. But, you know, a nice place, and also just investing around 95% of my money. That way, when it is time to buy, we have a ton of money there. And then by that point, if I want to just take the dividends, for example, I can use the dividends to just go ahead and pay the mortgage. And that way, guess what? I'm not paying for anything. You know, you get what I'm saying, guys? So it's all about what do you want? What do you care about? How are you going to do it? But don't use a retirement account. And on top of that, don't save for a down payment or anything like that when it comes to, you know, in the market, because you can't predict exactly what the market is going to be unless you put it, for example, in just bonds. And at that point, it's more secure. But at that point, you're not actually making anything either. Okay. But guys, that is about it for this video. Comment down below and let me know exactly what would you do. And on top of that, if you like this video right here, guys, well, like this video. On top of that, if you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell to get notified. And if you guys want to text me or talk to me one-on-one, join my Patreon, link down below, or send me a DM on Instagram at TommyBryson. And before I go, if you want to watch a video on how to save for a down payment for a house, here's that video right here, and click my face right now. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace.